All right, Anthony, I might let you kick
Let's
off
yeah.
with
So
setting us up with
yeah,
Kirsty.
let's get into it. I think we can use there's a dashboard that's come out recently that Kirsty's put together, which is it final yet, Kirsty? The end of year dashboard? Is it
Yeah, it
close?
is. Yeah. Let me
Well,
share my screen.
let's have a look at the dashboard that has just been created. This was done in the last couple of weeks, and given the time
So,
of year that it is, the dashboard that we have is the end of year dashboard.
yeah. So basically, this dashboard's been designed looking at what are the things that you have to do as part of end of year. So, if you've been to any of our end of year learning seminars or our training sessions, there were a few steps that you go through to balance off your end of year. And what we're trying to do here is just have a one-stop shop of, just one area where you can look at all those things. So in this particular dashboard, we've just included, a basic of how many employees you've got and what income type they are, the end of year payroll report, end of year costing report, and the pay event, which is a new one that we've just created for this end of year. And what we've done is we've broken it down by the STP reporting groups, and then it's further broken down by the reporting subgroups and also including pay components. So what we find with customers as well is that when you're doing end of year and you're looking at the reporting groups, you then have to try and match it back to the pay component. And so what we've tried to design here is like a one-stop shop where you can actually view all that information that you would normally see in, say, your STP update screen. So that's the idea of this. And so it's just, you can see it visually, the values, but you can also drill down as well, or show data is another way of doing it as well. So if I click on, say, a particular column in here, and I just show the data, it shows me all the data for those fields in there. And then from there, you can actually download it, or you can take a screenshot and things like that. So you can actually do that for each of these areas, or you can actually go to the top, take that back, and you can filter it for financial year. And that might make it a little bit easier because, you want to see what's current. So then you just hit apply, and then everything gets filtered to just this financial year. So again, you can see visually just what's there for this current financial year. Just hover over it. You can drill, like all these dashboards that we've got here, you have the ability to drill down further. So this is what we're really excited to show and give you an idea of, how we're trying to make it easier for you at end of financial year.
So this is something that will obviously, so when we go into the next financial year, which is scary because it'll be 25, 26.
2026. Yeah.
Think about the dates. I feel like I'm still in like 2020 U2K or something, So this dashboard will obviously run through the year, which means that as we approach end of year, you could be having have a look at this and just seeing that you're okay rather than just wait. I mean, we always sort of say you don't have to wait to end of year to run some reports, but this will just be running in the background. And I think
right,
that touches on a question that I had a number of times. So a lot of people that I've spoken to one-to-one about Evo have asked the question about, well, how do you run the reports, right? Because we are so accustomed to going into, say, MicroPay, setting up your filters and then hitting, run report, and then the report displays on screen. It's probably something we've skipped over, just assuming that everyone knows how this works. But do you want to just take us through how the data actually is displayed, I suppose?
Yeah, so each insight has its own filters, basically. So you can run it per insight, or you can run it as a whole from a dashboard. It's really dependent on what you want to do. So if I was to say I wanted to query just the payroll report, and I just want to filter that, I hit on the filter button. I scroll down to what I'm trying to look at, which is my payroll transactions. And you can filter by this information. So you can filter on period end date, by the pay frequency. So the period end date will automatically populate as whatever you've got in MicroPay. The pay frequency, again, whatever pay frequency you've got in MicroPay will display. And end of month, very similar. And then whether or not it's been processed. So the whether or not the is processed is only for the payroll report, and that's just if the transaction has been processed in your system and the end of pay has been completed. That's what that field's there for. But it's really simple to just go in and just tick on the boxes that you want, and then that's what gets displayed in that particular area. at the top as well, we've got what we call combined filters. So we've got combined filters, which means that all these reports get filtered by these combined filters. So the first one is connection name. So that's really handy if you have multiple databases in MicroPay and they're all going into the one Evo, and say you just want to run this particular end of year for one database, you can. And the connection name will be whatever your payroll name is. And this is what is set up as part of your Evo implementation. The next one is financial year, which I've just shown you. And then the other one is payroll company. So payroll company is basically a list of all your payroll companies in each of your payroll databases.
Yeah.
So we try to make it as simple as possible. If you find that there's a filter that you would like that you just can't see there, please let us know and we can add this to a future release.
Yeah, cool. And so when we're actually going into this data, though, you're not having to actually run a report, right? It's just displaying there. It's just you're not
automatically displayed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's quite a different behavior. Like in MicroPay, you open up the report menu, you might go to your payroll report, set your filters because you're looking at a particular pay frequency or something. You run the report goes to the screen, and then you're either PDFing it or printing it out or something. So the behavior here is that you just open the system and it's just the data is there. Is it there based on the last filters? Like what if you've had filters set, will it just save those filters or
no? So the filters will always reset. After you exit this screen, you have to come back and reset those filters, unfortunately. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. All right, cool. But that's like I said, one of the things I kept getting asked was, do you have to run the report? You don't actually have to run it. It's just physically there. It just shows up. In terms of the data, so we spoke about some people may or may not know this, but the data sets refresh how frequently?
They happen once a night. So we've set it for 7 o'clock in the evening. That's when the data will refresh, but customers do have the ability to refresh their own data at any stage that they want. So we do have a set of instructions on the knowledge base article to step the customer through how to do that, but they can do that at any stage. So as they're going through and they've made a change and they want to see that in Evo, they just go into the data engine, do an update, and basically it'll pull through any changes that are done. And then you just come back into your boards and you can have a look at the refreshed data.
Cool.
There's been a couple of questions. Sorry, I'm not sure if you covered this off, but there's obviously a lot of excitement around what they're seeing at the moment. When's this available, Kirsty? I think this is going to be in the next release, right?
Yeah, it is. So I'll just give a quick dates that it's going out. So on the 16th of June, which is Monday, we'll have the desktop release of MicroPay. Then on the 20th of June, we'll have the hosted upgrade. And then on the 23rd of June, you'll have the Evo upgrade. So to be able to access this particular dashboard, you must upgrade to the latest version. And then when we do the upgrade on the 23rd, when you log in on the 24th, you'll be able to see this dashboard.
Yeah, cool.
There's also...
I didn't see this questions coming up.
No, it's fine. I've been keeping my eye on the question because you're the smart people in the room, so I can do the admin bit, right? You're the payroll guys. There's been questions, just I'll cover off with everybody because since we're on end of year and then we can move on. Yes, there are services available. If you need somebody to come in, there's also recruitment as well. So they can actually bring somebody as a short-term placement as well. So what I might do is I'll add those details to the slides. Anybody on this call should be coming next week should be coming next week to our customer engagement webinar. We will be covering off a lot about end of year. So, and Kirsty's going to show this as well. So, it's invaluable that everyone, please come next Thursday. We can put the invite link later on and send that to you. So, the other one was somebody had mentioned, or a company had mentioned they can't see their data. And I don't know, but I'm going to make an assumption that you may or may not have actually connected your data to Evo. So there is a process. We will talk about that in a little bit, how you do that. So, all right, back to you guys.
No, that's great. And what we can do is those customers who can't see this, we can actually just put you in touch with someone on our end who can just check that for you. So MicroPay and Evo do need a connection, which is what we call a data loader. so that the data from MicroPay does end up in Evo. And that data load is what Kirsty mentioned, that refreshes every night at 7 o'clock. Or, as Kirsty also mentioned, you can actually have the system refresh at a particular point through the day because you want to see an updated version, overnight or something.
That's a good, it's a good thing to cover. That's excellent.
And I think I did see in the chat, in the question somewhere too, will we be able to lock the filters in future? Do you think that's something we can do, Kirst? Or is it something
we're looking into that? Yeah, it needs to be an individual setting, and that's something we are looking into.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So we've talked about like dashboards are there. You can look at the different filters. You can export data. So that's really cool. Let's talk the point of today is to talk about the value of data and the personas. So for me, the first thing I want to talk about too is that if you're just purely an employee, right? So Evo brings lots of valuable assets. It brings you things like Copilot, obviously, analytics, which is really what we're talking about today, but it also brings things like Applause and Collaborate and lots of other things. If you're an employee, though, and this kind of data is obviously sensitive, how do we make sure that an employee can't see this information? Because they just want to see applause.
Yeah, so it's just a setting in your members. So when you set up all your employees within Evo, you go into the roles and you actually manage what they are able to access and what they're not able to access. So in this particular instance, I'm an admin user, so I have access to everything. But you would, in a case where you have an employee, you don't want access to analytics, you would set them as no access. And that would be the same for any of these fields here. It is up to the admin user to define that, and they just make the settings in here, and then it just restricts the user of what they can and can't see in their products under the access button.
So we can still use Applause. We can give shout out to our employees for job well done, and then not see your payroll data in the analytics tool. So that's but the power of data is that sometimes it's not for you to be seen either, right? So we don't want to be showing payroll data to your whole business. That's a really important thing. Now let's think about like a CFO. So for CFO, often someone who is not hands-on with payroll probably don't know how MicroPay works and where the reports are and things like that. So we have these wonderful reports now and dashboards in Evo. If we're thinking about someone like a CFO or a board member or whoever it is that's in your management team, how can they use analytics and in an easy way so that they don't, they don't necessarily want to be, rummaging through all the different dashboards and reports. What might be the way we do that?
Yeah, so you would set the user up as a user so they can have access to it but not actually change anything. I'm just going to change myself back. I'll just cancel that. And then what you can do is in their own logins, they can set up their own basic dashboards of all their own saved dashboards. Actually, I might go back into analytics first. You can create your own dashboards in here. And so what you can do is you can actually put together a bunch of insights that we've already created, designed for your CEO or your CFO, where they just want a visual of what's going on. And then you can save that as a dashboard just for them. And then from there, you can also save that dashboard as a My Dashboard, where you can add that dashboard as every time they log in, that's the first thing that they see as well. So you have the ability of creating them and adding whatever you want. And then you have the ability of having what they call their My Own Dashboard, where you've just got it there front and center for them as well.
Cool. So you can have open Evo, there's a dashboard there.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's cool because that could be that, like, we could have the CFO role or, some sort of finance role. They could have dashboards there about payroll and whatnot. But then we could have like a HR role where you're having things like turnover stats and, more contextually relevant data for those people as well. Because what we use, right. I think, I was, for those who don't know, I was payroll many moons ago too. But one of the things we're quite used to in payroll is being the person that's dissecting data, right? Running reports and, culling spreadsheets and marrying data and doing all these things and doing that for one person, then doing something else for someone else and then sending out all these bits of information. But what we can do now is actually have these dashboards, have customizable views for different personas in your business, and you don't have to do any of those things anymore.
Yep, make it really simple. And it's kind of like you've done it once and then you just set it up and that's what they see all the time. And you can customize it to whatever you want it to be as well. Although we have these standard ones, they're just ones that we think are useful. You can definitely create your own and just, put whatever you feel is important to your company or important to the person who's looking at it and just show whatever you want, basically.
Yeah, cool. And then, of course, from a payroll lens, when we do want sort of more access, you can then have, obviously your payroll focused sort of dashboards and whatnot as well.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
So that leads me to the next thing. So we spoke about filters within the dashboards. I mean, it's probably worth calling out what we do and don't do right now and what we're working towards, because then that can help us work out what what things can be done in the future. So I often think about multi-site businesses where, there's a manager per site who might be managing the costs for that particular site, or, retail stores, or, those sorts of things. What sort of things are we working on at the moment that might help distributing information, but then looking at the security controls around that for different sites in different areas?
So at the moment, we are working on security settings for database at the database level. And then once we've got that, we'll be then working on doing it. It's very similar to how we've got in MicrOpay, where you can restrict users by pay frequency, payroll company, and things like that. And then that's what we're working towards later this year to get that set up, that security model set up within Evo. But at this stage, it is per database. That's our first focus. Yeah,
that's worth knowing what we do now and where we're sort of heading. And Steve, that you probably that excites me a lot, because when we see things like we got a lot of franchise businesses, we got a lot of retail businesses, we got a lot of businesses that are potentially just one ABN but multi-site. And the thing is that they want to see their report, not the reports for a different site, because of security and confidentiality and all that. So that's something that in not the too distant future we could be having dashboards that you don't have to cull, you don't have to marry data, you don't have to match data, you don't have to do anything. You can have a site person loading up their version of Evo and just having their data in there for their site from their payroll that's just been run a day ago. Or,
and I think the power of that, is talking to Kirsty, talking to Michelle Moore, she's obviously been on a lot of sessions as well, but the fact that they have to then run separate reports, right? So they run those initially, they could take a while. Mm-hmm. And that slows the system down. It kind of just stops, right? And then the joke is they go off and make a cup of tea or come back or whatever. Then they got to export it. Then they got to marry it up into Excel. You can imagine the overheads in that, right? So tools like this, I mean, I think I mentioned this in previous meetings, but I've been with companies that put in, third-party tools, for reporting dashboards and insights, spending, hundreds of thousands of dollars to get this right. And Evo just sort of comes now, almost, out of the box for, and all that information is just ready sitting there. And I think I say that I say that because it is not easy to do it. The dashboards look exciting. They look, like they just come to life, but there's so much work to get all the data together. And because of the data sets, the way that we have them set and the work that the Kirsty and the team have done, it can actually start to bring those insights to life, and it's technically like joins and stuff like that, but things can start to connect together and then make it meaningful. And I was going to say in the last session, we talked about other metrics that we could bring to life, things like employee turnover, looking at age and statistics and stuff like that. So those things help the business then make business decisions, right? Yeah. Whether or not they're going to spend money and on particular projects or things like that, and expand and so forth. So there's paying people, which is obviously super, super important and the key to every cycle. But there's also those insights that help the business make those business decisions.
And as well. That's where, like we've talked for over 2 years, Stephen. We've produced reports on this. The power of payroll data, and lots of. It always gets called out as the payroll data is very valuable to business, but the missing thing is, how do you do it right? And this is where this is what is the pathway to providing the power of data to your business and actually giving you the method to do it. And the question just came in was, with multi-sites, would we be able to restrict access by location and cost center? I don't want to put you on the spot, Kirsty, but is that sort of where we're thinking about as well?
Yeah, we are. So we're trying to look at, the same type of levels, but we just need to start at the top and we'll work our way down.
Yeah. So that sort of thing is what is the thought process. And, like this journey's been fairly fast. We didn't even have Evo in November, and now we've got Evo when we've got dashboards and we've got analytics and Copilot and all these things. So it really excites me that this is now providing the vehicle to provide power in data, because it is automating what would be, like you said, Stephen, this sort of thing would cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars in investing in BI tools.
It does. And if people are on the call with, Luke Thomas, we actually did this project. It took forever too. So to get this, at the velocity that they're working on this now, like this stuff is just coming to life. So the team it's amazing. And I noticed that something just came in the chat about, can we look at headcount, turnover, stuff like that. So again, that sort of stuff would be, a bit more difficult to bring to life, because you'd have to probably put it in Excel and so forth. So once we could do it and pivot it this way, again, and I think, Kirsty, sorry, I know we've spoken about you can create your own dashboards, right, as well. So, and I think you can even go a step further, because there's an option we have called advanced. So people that are on standard in Evo, they got Copilot and this as well. But with advanced, you can actually start to bring in third-party data. So that might be something we do down the track. Because you can imagine if you got another piece of data coming from somewhere else, and you start to bring that to life in here, how much that enriches that view. But that's for another time. But
we've had some very cool questions coming in about actually doing creating dashboards. I think we might take that into another session, because we're out of time now anyway. But we can absolutely do that. So we'll take on the feedback in the chat. So it's great for that. Thank you for that feedback that's coming in. And we'll answer some of these other questions also outside of the session. But I think it's really cool.
All right.
One thing we may as well just finish on. Do you want to just show the employee sort of metrics reports? I think it was a headcount report or something, Kirsty, since we got you.
I think I've got one. Let me just find it. So we've got one for headcount by location. Oh, that's a pie. That's probably not the best one. Let's do this one, which is not actually in the release, because we're still checking it, but not that one either. Let me see if I can find a different one. All we've got is a pie at the moment.
That's right.
And it's probably not the best one. So, again, it has the numbers in there and, percentages of of the employees. But we probably need a bit more information on what you mean by headcount. Do you want like a graph? Do you want just for a financial year? We just need a bit more information of what they need. And then we can look at putting that in here. Yeah.
So what's cool about this?
We just have a very basic one at the moment.
And what's cool about this, and again, it starts to get a bit geeky, but when you have a key metric like headcount or something like their employees, then you do it by this, by this, by this, by this, right? So that's where the metric sort of comes in to bring that to life. So what you do is you have a starting point. You see how fast that rendered, right? So if that's updating, that just renders that quickly. And that's the power of something like this. But that's a great example.